Welcome, everybody, and welcome, John Doyle.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a bit of a work to get you in here.
It was. I didn't know that this building was used for this purpose, so I had to navigate a little bit. And I called you, but you didn't answer.
But I meant over time. It's been...
Oh, that is also true.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's always good to be with you on the News and Why, but I'm excited. I'm excited for this conversation and intentionally did not lead you into the conversation.
I knew that was the plan, too. I knew that you weren't ignoring me. You would never do that. I knew that this was all strategic. You'd been planning this for weeks. It was 4D chess, if you will.
4D chess. John texted me and he's like, okay, what are we talking about? And that's normal. We all want to know. I was like, nah, I'm not going to tell him.
Yeah, I was worried that, throughout the weeks when we've done News and Why together, I'll say things that are a little bit over the line, and I could see that you were making a mental note. Like, when I get this guy on a one-on-one, I'm going to confront him on all this. We're going to have the timestamps, the receipts, and everything. We're going to find out what's going on in there.
And he knows. And the history and the schoolmates I contacted and just all our military resources, our police resources, the dark web.
Right.
We use it all.
Bring it on. I'm ready.
Now, listen, man, I really, on a serious note, I'm thankful you're here. I appreciate your mind and your voice. I think you have a very unique voice in your generation at this time. You've got a very loyal following of people that have over time, I think, you've earned respect. And respect is earned. I mean, you've earned a position to speak to things in their lives, right? And we're all always learning new things. But I want to take a dive into something with you for the work that we're doing, right? So we fight human trafficking. We use this platform and others, and we see crazy things. I mean, if people have no real idea of what we really do every day, but it all stems to me from certain elements, and I want to attack one of those elements today. A couple questions I want to ask you. This is bottom line. Pull no punches, okay? I want to talk about this generation of men, young men, okay? What do they believe? What are they trained to do? What are they thinking? Because I come from a very different world, John. I mean, I come from not just different South Africa than here, and we did a show the other day about, I was raised with corporal punishment and just, crazy stuff, okay? They would make us do things just because that's how they thought they were going to build strong men. We had a draft system in the military and all that kind of stuff. Where do you feel guys are, young guys today? And that's why I didn't want to lead you, because I didn't want my opinions to be your opinions. But where do you feel, let's just say under 30?
I think that we basically embody this perpetual state of cynicism towards anything. It's cool to not care about things. Like, I've heard anecdotes from you about your upbringing and how there would be certain ceremonies or certain things that men were just expected to do. Yeah. And there's sort of this attitude now among young men in this country where it's like they'll point and laugh and be like, oh, that's cringe. Oh, you cringe. It's like almost cringe to care about anything other than basically your immediate pursuit of some form of pleasure. And if you look at the role models that young men have nowadays, like guys like Andrew Tate, for example, who I think that he's on the net a positive. But even that, it's like they're selling to men something that is just a more sophisticated form of the hedonism that they already embody. So, a guy who maybe is not listening to any sort of thing that would maybe be expanding his mind, he's maybe working an entry-level job, he's using drugs and he's playing video games and he's on dating apps, and then he looks at the men who maybe are going to be his thought leaders, so to speak, and they're just trying to guide him towards a more sophisticated version of that. So it's not saying reject that, pursue something greater than oneself. It's like, well, instead of marijuana, how about cocaine or ecstasy? Instead of Tinder, how about $2,000 escorts or things like that? So it's all just materialism and hedonism. It's just channeled at a different scale, but there's been no serious attempt to actually break through that towards something more meaningful. And so I think that guys are totally without that. And I think there is a masculine instinct to look for something to care about. And I think our country, perhaps not intentionally, I don't want to get conspiratorial, but it's been very good at channeling that into things that can be commercialized and that are ultimately non-threatening. So like, for example, a young man can come home from school and tell his dad that, today I learned that I could be a girl if I want to. And his dad will be like, well, that's weird. But if that same kid has a friend over who criticizes the Cowboys, that dad's going to be off the couch. What do you mean the Cowboys aren't the best football team? What do you mean? And so we are so willing to die on the hill of like our football teams or, our favorite rock band or something. But it's like things that really matter: faith, family, nation, those are things that are completely swept under the rug.
And again, just for the record, did not feed you a single question because I just want an open dialogue. Generational differences here, cultural differences here. I got mad respect for you. I really appreciate your voice, although we give you a hard time at the Blaze.
Well, I deserve it. I need to be, whipped into line, and I really appreciate you saying that.
But you are a young guy, though, right? That's willing to learn, though, and that's one of the elements that I'm not seeing, John. I mean, I've watched you take correction, and we all. I get trust me. You get married, you get corrected, buddy. You're gonna get corrected, but I'm seeing because to me, and look, none of us are perfect. But I'm super observant. I mean, I'm trained that way. We look for predators and pedophiles every day. I don't miss a thing, I promise you. I walk in my house and I go, that crumb wasn't on the floor. I mean, I see everything and I watch you and I go, he's different. He's different than what I see the norm is. And that's why I really wanted you on the show. And we'll travel through many topics here. But I see you, like the girls that work here, Rebecca is from Baylor University. Well, she doesn't look like a product of Baylor because if they come from Baylor right now, it's high-level dysfunction. I mean, every girl just wants to get married in 4 seconds. And, I mean, they're so desperate, but she's not that. So when I find people in your generation that I go, okay, wait a minute. This guy's got his own mind, right? Like it or hate it, but he is definitely different than just the masses. That I love. I'm so glad you brought up Andrew Tate. I think Andrew is in searching himself.
Do you mind if I comment on something you just said before we get into that? I'm really glad to hear you say that because in the last 2 years or so, that's something I've really tried to work on, which is understanding that the right wing versus left wing thing can ultimately be broken down, I believe, to, the argument between whether we can achieve equality or whether hierarchy is natural. And masculinity and hierarchy are one-to-one. And that's like what has always been the case in male social circles, for example. You are introduced, somebody vouches for you, and every other guy in the group, they're not going to like you. They're probably not even going to talk to you. And when they do, they're just going to be busting your chops. And you can't necessarily even return that because it's like you just showed up, you think you can, and you just have to keep your mouth shut, know your place. And over time, they'll see, this guy's worth his weight, and they'll accept you. And I've noticed now these young guys either A, have this sort of, immature attitude of like, whatever, I don't have to listen to my parents or authority, I know better. But even then the ones who are like, oh, I'm going to be an alpha male, I'm going to like be a masculine guy, they still think that just means them being in charge of like, whatever, feeling like they have to win every argument. And I think that's very immature. I think that you have to understand that as a young man, what your job is to shut up and just listen to the guys who are older than you, who are more experienced than you. And so that's something I've tried to do in conversations with my dad.
And contribute. And when you start, you're so right. And again, I tell guys, when guys lose their way a little bit, I say, pause. Again, I'm from Africa. Look at the animal kingdom. Look at what primates do with the youngsters. You're in the pack, but you don't lead.
Yeah.
You contribute, though. A male father lion will teach a young lion to start hunting. You got to bring meat into the pack. You can't. There's a season when you just eat. But then there comes a season where you don't lead, but you got to kill.
Yeah.
And through that, and then there comes a day when they just go, okay, all right, you just graduate, and now you have a voice, and then and then the cycle turns. This is the locker room effect in the locker room. This is why when these quarterbacks get drafted in the first round, Joe Burrow, all these guys, and it's a first round draft quarterback, first pick, and this guy's going to lead the locker room. I laugh at that. I don't care that he's the greatest quarterback you've ever drafted in your life. This guy's not leading the locker room.
Yeah, and I've heard the similar dynamic in like the military. You'll have some ROTC guy walk in there and think that he's going to take precedence over like a staff sergeant just because he is, on paper a higher rank. And it's like, look, that guy has seen combat. He's been there for the training. Like, you're not just going to walk in and think that you're going to inspire loyalty.
It's the natural order of selection at some time. And look, men, especially men who are not truly in touch with who God created them to be. If that spiritual maturity is not there, then it's all just a contest. Everything's a contest. It's measuring constantly. It's constant. You walk into a room and it couldn't even be a competition. It could just be 10 guys getting together, but it's a natural thing. And so I'm glad to hear you say that. And I think this generation, the young guys, I think they're losing that battle though. I think they are. I say this with no disrespect to you because I don't see you this way, but they're very soft.
Oh, yeah.
And I just mean soft, I can fight. They're soft emotionally. They're soft in taking a stand for something or having their own voice brave enough to go, heck, I disagree with everybody in the room.
Yeah.
And I'm going to voice it without ego, without insecurity, but this is who I am. I just don't see that with them, man. I think we're in trouble.
Yeah.
If we don't correct the ship, I think we're in trouble.
Yeah, everything that they should care about after World War II was systematically stripped away from them because it was thought by the social scientists that the best way to prevent something like mass global conflict would literally be to strip man of anything that he would feel compelled to fight for. And so, I think what would you say? The quintessential work was like The Authoritarian Personality, which was written by the sociologist at UC Berkeley. And that was used to form the public education system after World War II. And they said that the person who was the most likely to be a fascist is the young man who was raised in a 2-parent household, who was Christian, and who was taught that there is right and that there is wrong. That's who's most likely to be a fascist. And so in order to combat fascism, which is the worst thing ever, I guess, is, you have to eliminate a man's ability to be able to understand all of that. And that's why you have this generation of men who are all soft, who are all like these just doughy, spiritually type of guys. And even the ones who like work out and take their fitness very seriously, they have no spiritual strength and no spiritual conviction.
But that's what I'm
see it in their eyes,
yes, too. You can see it in the eyes.
They're soft.
And it's not the guys go, well, look, it's okay. I won't go to the Navy SEAL level because there's a toughness, but it's that you just can't get there. But even guys in the Marine Corps, no disrespect, but it doesn't necessarily make you strong societally.
Yeah.
On the real issues that matter. We're not just talking about fighting. We're now talking about standing up for your family when all hell is breaking loose, standing up for life. When the norm is let's just abort every baby. Those are the things that take serious moral conviction, because that's when society can look at you and go, we're going to strip you from certain societal rights, cancel you, they've come after you like thunder. And that's my concern, because the cycle that I've now drawn is this. And not to get too deep in our documentary that's coming out, but Alfred Kinsey Institute, writes the Sexual Manifesto for the World's Youth. Everything we know in this country is based on Kinsey's work in sex. The education system, all of it. All of it's based on Kinsey's work. It was flawed work. It's not science. He was interviewing pedophiles, asking them what children want. Okay, and the pedophiles saying, well, kids love sex. Well, you just interviewed a pedophile. That's probably not the right subset of research group, polling. But Kinsey knew if you could get men to objectify women, and you could do it so well that women would start to self-objectify, which we are way past. Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, hello, right? When women starts to self-objectify, they actually start harming men in a way that is just demonic, because they strip men of any value and worth, and it's sexual immorality, and it's porn, and it's a downward spiral. And then you convince men that they created this glass ceiling over women that they've got to break, which is complete nonsense. Right? And now we got a culture here where you got guys apologizing for being guys. You got guys believing that, there's some unholiness that happened between us and women. And now you got a bunch of young women in their 20s who are not married, Christian, in their 30s not married, in their 40s not married. And I go, yeah, we broke guys, but you were part of it, though. You self-objectified to a level where you pulled guys into sexual immorality at a level that's insane, right? Instead of holding a guy up and go, listen, dude, you want to get close to me? You're going to work for it a little bit. Call the guy up to greatness. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's completely correct. And I feel so badly for these women, because if you look at like what they're doing, it's actually, maybe I would argue, as with a more traditional attitude, worse off than even their most dystopian nightmare about like what the 1940s and 50s were like, because they're still doing the dishes and they're still cleaning their house, except now they're responsible for the mortgage. And, even the jobs that they pursue, whether it's early education, they're still nurturing children. Or one of my favorites is girls who go into interior design. That's nesting. You're just nesting for other people's families. So it's like everything that they're doing, they're still channeling their instincts as mothers and nurturers, but now without children, without that direct benefit. And then they still have more work to do. Whereas, we're taught it was the worst thing in the world for there to be a single income back when this economy was structured to support that. And you would stay home, and like this man would create this life for you, and you would raise his children, you would, take care of the household, but you could pursue any sort of project or hobby that you would have liked to. I mean, there were sewing circles, there were, you could do whatever you wanted. And that was like paradise, more or less. I mean, it was decadent and it probably led to where we are now, but it was like great. And we're supposed to believe, because these people are so miserable now and they can't have a concept that any other previous generation was actually happy. And so they make up these myths like, oh, well, actually, all of those housewives were being beaten by their husbands and they were all on antidepressants. And, the sons were secretly gay and the fathers were, molesting the daughters. There's nothing, there's not even anecdote for that, let alone even actual data. It's all made up to convince people, oh, you think you're miserable now. Well, back then was even worse because we're always making this eternal march of progress, which is just totally not true.
Well, you can't destroy the family if you don't pin. This is Sun Tzu, the art of war. If I want to make war with you, I don't fight you. I convince Dan to fight you, and I take the spoils. That is the perfect mechanism of war. And so when evil is real, or those with evil intent look and say, how do we break the family? Pin the husbands against the wives. Pin the men against the women. Create a class war, and Jordan Peterson does a great job in absolutely debunking the myth that men get paid more than women. Yeah. I had this conversation yesterday with a girl, and I said, okay, let's have this conversation. Would you want all the women to go build the roads, to go do road construction? Can a woman do it? Yes, of course she can. I don't limit a woman to do anything because my single mom did it all. Mm-hmm. But do I want our society's women to go, on average now, to go shorten their lives by 12 years, because road construction crews' lifespan is shortened by 12 years, to go be out in the sun, break their backs, okay, be burnt to smithereens, not see their kids that often, work their tails off. It's not a super great income-producing job. Would we want women to go build the roads? Of course not, because I would be concerned who's taking care of the kids, who's setting the schedule, who's making sure that the family doesn't fall apart. Or would we want women to go be window washers and hang from 150 stories, right? And just fill in the blanks, or masonry, or bricklayers. Can a woman be a bricklayer? Of course you can be a bricklayer. But do I necessarily think that is the best place for you, the best use of your intellect and your talent in society? No.
Yeah, and it makes us look weak as a society when we allow for that to happen, because whether or not, we're very enlightened in the Western world, but when other countries look at us and we have, women in our military dying on the front lines or women doing manual labor, that shouldn't be happening. And it really just reveals the weakness that we have as men. And
men.
Exactly like you said, it's not because they can't do it. It's because they shouldn't have to. That is our job. Correct. And when we're like, oh, well, feminists, now you get what you want. Now you have to lay bricks. Like we think that we're like getting even or getting back at them, which in itself is very petty and immature. Like we have to be mature as men and be like, well, it kind of sucks, but this is our job and we have to do it. That is duty. That is our job as men to do. And we think we're like, really getting back at them and waving the finger like, haha, now you have to wave bricks. The world is laughing at us.
They are, and evil is laughing at us. We got you to take the bait, buddy. Haha, look at this. I want to take a quick break. Patriot Mobile, amazing. The only Christian cell phone provider in the United States. Have gone to the border with us. Glenn Beck endorses them as well. Glenn Story at Patriot Mobile and his team went to the border with us to help save children, but they also went to Austin with us last week to protect kids from the Texas State School Board of Education TEKS revisions. They stepped up big time. Why did you check them out? Go to 972-PATRIOT, mention the bottom line, you get free activation, or just go online and mention the bottom line. And if you're a veteran, they're going to take extra good care of you, so check out Patriot Mobile. To that point, John, they can. A woman can do anything, but we have to, like sports, say, where do I play this player?
Yeah.
Where does he produce the best return for his effort? I can play him at wide receiver, but he's really a safety, right? Or I could play him in the line, but he's underweight, right? So we look at women in society and go, God created women. Why? Number one, Adam needed a helpmate. We can't do it alone. We can't reproduce alone. God wants to, he wants to build his kingdom. We have to reproduce. Well, here we got an issue because they don't want us to reproduce. 2 men can reproduce, 2 women cannot reproduce. So it's a constant attack on God's original design, original intent. You're a devout Catholic. Thank you for that. Thank you for your faith. Thank you for how you speak about your faith. But there's purpose. God did everything with purpose. And so there's enmity. This is Genesis 3. Enmity between Satan's seed and Eve's seed. He will strike her heel, and our seed, the seed, predominantly the men, and we will crush his head. Okay. The second society buys into, well, a woman can do that job too. And you let women believe, well, we want to prove to you we can do it too. We can be the world's best mechanics. Okay. I think you have the intellect to be a great mechanic, but I don't want you under the hood with your nails and grease every day.
Yeah.
Right? That's a man's job. So my son is 3 years old. He's 3. That little dude yesterday morning, our trash day is Wednesdays. Okay? Trash day is Wednesdays at my house, at your house, Dan, our neighborhood. That dude knows Wednesday morning, he's 3 years old. He's walking the trash out. Not his sisters. Now, his sisters have to put stuff in the trash. Mm-hmm. They've got to clean up after them and get their plates in the sink. But it's brother's job Wednesday morning with dad, not by himself. Imagine my 3-year-old. But he's out there. We start now. There's just certain things. And it's not going to be, can his sisters take the trash out? Of course. That's not the conversation. But when I tell the guy he doesn't have to, we start leaving major gaps in society. And women will step in to fill it, but we're weak.
Yeah.
Weak.
Yeah, and even, their entire argument for this is that it's all like societal conditioning and, it's a social construct. But if you look at toddlers or even babies who would have the least amount of that, it really does vindicate the natural argument. Like if you look at what little boys want to play with, it's trucks. And, you look at what they're watching, their heroes are the firemen, the police officers, the garbage men, the guys who are doing jobs that suck, but that are very important and that are putting their lives at risk. And young boys, even when they're babies, they are attracted to this idea. Whereas women, they want to play with dolls. They want to play with more feminine toys. And now you've got these
family
parents,
dynamic, building family.
They think that they can, raise gender neutral babies. And you read all these posts on Reddit of, I'm trying to raise my daughter gender neutral, but she keeps wanting to play with dolls. And it's like, you can't fight nature. And by extension, you can't fight God, which is really what this is. Like, even if you look at the very beginning of man and woman, what was the punishment? We're supposed to toil in the fields. And what does Satan do? He perverts. And so now women are toiling in the fields, but they're not having kids like they're supposed to be doing. And now if you look at the logical extension of that, which would be, the purpose of the woman's life being, being a mother, nurturing children, they're not doing that. And they're actually rebelling against that and saying the whole concept of it is just unnatural. Instead, they're getting animals. They're calling themselves dog moms, which I think is a very disturbing and just
yeah, and by the way, I'm going to offend everybody here. I'm the guy. Look, I love animals, right? I'm from Africa, but I do believe God said, Jaco, eat the animals, save the people. Okay, I'm a people guy. But when you call your dog your child, love the dog, but it's not a child. It's not a child. Can you pull something up for me, Rebecca? Can you pull up 2020? I don't even know. Just give it a wing. 2022 stats on American birth rate for U.S. and then pull it up for Israel. And pull it up for China. And I want to show people something.
Israel's probably the highest.
The highest.
By far.
Because they had to rebuild a nation. Mm-hmm. Literally, the nation was waning away. The nation is being, slaughtered through the Holocaust, even family members of ours. But they had to rebuild a nation. And if you see where we are as America, it's a shocking statistic. Elon Musk was asked the other day, they said, Elon, what's the number one threat to mankind? He was on this podcast with these young kids who probably don't even know where they were born. I mean, they know so little. Yeah. And he said the lack of childbirth is the greatest threat to our culture. See if you can get it.
It's about 1.2, I think.
It's 1.2. Yeah. When you dip under 2.1, you're starting to lose your society.
Yep.
We're 1.2. China is, I think, dipped under 1. Israel at places is 4.2, 4.6. In the town of Tzfat, it's 4.6, right? And that's children per couple, right? Replacing the two and increasing the tribe, right? We're at 1.2. We are being decimated as a culture, and it's on our watch. In the bigger picture, this master eugenics program, which I would argue even COVID is a part of, and even all the indoctrination of opioids and drugs and pharmaceuticals. It's all this eugenics program saying thin society. Elon Musk, of all people, we're underpopulated, and I agree.
And what's scary about it too, because everyone knows it's not like America is just going to disappear off the map. Countries like Israel, they have a significantly lower population than we do, and so their 3 point whatever is interesting, but what I think is scary about our country is it's not like we're losing people. We're specifically losing Americans. And the mass migrants who are coming here, their fertility rate's much higher than 2. It's in the 3s. I mean, the average amount of kids they're having, and we subsidize this. We pay for these third world immigrants to come here and have more children than the native population. And so America is going to be overtaken within the next 20 years by third world cultures predominantly. Right now, you can see a big fight going on. And I think that we're going to have a very sober awakening when we realize that if you import the third world, you're going to become the third world. And we don't want to be that.
Unless you can hold on to a little concept called assimilation. But they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. And I lived in Canada, John. And when I was in Canada, the most sobering things, I played football in Canada at the Argos. The most sobering thing that hit me there, I walked one day. It was World Cup year. I walked, and you go from Little Italy to Little Chinatown to little, and I go, but they're all flying their own flags.
Yep.
Nobody's flying the Canadian flag. And then I realized Canada doesn't have a culture.
Yep.
There is no, again, Canadians, I love you, but there's no Canada. As in, this is Canada. You come here, you become a Canadian. They don't. They don't celebrate that. They don't like that. And we are that as America. I'm an immigrant. I'm an American. I had to become an American. My concern now is our borders wide open. They're flooding in and not assimilating. No, I'm Cuban. I just live on this land.
Yeah.
This is America. You got to become American here. You got to speak English. Okay, that's harsh. No, you got to speak English.
It should be a lot harsher than that too, actually.
Okay. This is America. You need to know our laws, our ways, our customs. Bring your customs with you. Come cook your food the way you cooked it. I still cook my steak the way we did in South Africa, but I'm an American, but I have to assimilate. I have to become an American.
Yeah.
And that's my concern with what you're saying is there's an influx, but not an American culture that's being celebrated.
Exactly. And what's scary too is Americans, because they've been so stripped of identity, don't even know what American culture means. Mm-hmm. So the average person who's probably voting for a Republican, they would be totally fine with like an entire village coming from Somalia, so long as they're willing to attend like a baseball game and sing, Sweet Caroline with them and get drunk. And they're like, oh, damn it, he's just as American as I am. And it's like, you can't just interpret culture as, what can be sold to you at a street festival.
Absolutely.
Like, the music, the dancing, the food, the art, that's all great. I love that. But when you get into more complicated issues of culture, like attitudes about God, attitudes about gender roles, about work ethic, about even time preference, then you start to realize, yeah, exactly, even freedom.
But pause there for a second. Think about it. People come from a place where they were never free. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now they come to this country because they want freedom, but they have no concept of what it takes to be free.
Yes.
Unless they assimilate, unless they are trained and taught what it took to be free, they can never appreciate it.
Yeah.
They're just free, but they'll lose it again. Why? Because they can't protect it because they don't know what it took.
Yeah.
So ultimately, if you bring Central Africa to America and you let them be Central African America, America will become corrupt, will not be free, will be open for bribery and corruption because culturally, there has to also be a shift because there's a reason Central Africa is corrupt, right? It's not just for no reason. It's for decision-making and policy and culture. And so I'm so glad you can think that way as a young guy, but that's not the norm, John. Young guys today can't have this conversation. I mean, it's just mutual friends of ours on social media, man, on the street. They walk around and ask people, how many stars is on the American flag? 100 or 200?
Yeah.
And they go, 200. They didn't even know we have 50 states.
Yeah. And what's scary about that too is like everything, we mentioned this in the first part, that they should care about has been channeled into something completely inconsequential. And even their heroes, there are stories throughout history of people in this country that are so heroic they could inspire you for generations. I mean, we erected statues because of these men, but now they have no concept of like what an American hero actually is. And so they watch Marvel movies or they watch other superhero movies. And if you ask them, if you really press them, who's your hero? They'll say Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks, because that's all they know is like the civil rights. That's what American, heroism actually is, the civil rights movement. And I have my own thoughts on those two individuals in particular. You can probably see that on my channel if you're curious. But I just think that there are better stories of American heroism that really define like America that these people just have no concept of.
And look, the civil rights, super necessary. Absolutely. I come from South Africa, so it goes beyond saying, racism, no place for it. We are not systemically a racist country. That is complete bogus, absolutely bogus. For us to be a systemic racist nation, it means there must be a laws that differentiate between skin color. Does not exist. I would argue we're systemically a fatherless nation.
Yeah.
Because I can show you laws that drives the dad out of the house, incentivize the dad out of the house, the court system. So that, yes, but not racism. But no, your point, yes. And it's about American exceptionalism. We were combating the Texas State School Board this week. It was war, absolute war. They were very upset with me. Myself, Glenn had me on, and we went to war with them, and they were not happy that we were exposing some Republicans on the school board, right? They're Republicans, but they're not conservatives. Mm-hmm. They're Republicans because that's the ticket they ran under, and they thought they could get elected, let me tell you. Because there was an argument for half a day on American exceptionalism, where they do not want us to teach American exceptionalism. They don't want to teach about the moon landing, nothing exceptional. And they kept, you were there, Dan, they kept asking conservative school board members, well, what's so exceptional about America? Why should we say America's more exceptional? And then the answers were, we're not saying we're better than other people. We're not, and then they go, so you think everything we've done is exceptional? And we had this little AOC prodigy from the freaking squad, Miss Perez. Oh, so you think we've never made mistakes? We're not saying that. We're saying we want to put emphasis on the good, show the bad, don't change history, learn from it, but let's inspire. No, that they don't want that, John. They want that to die. Yeah. They want you to believe that we are this evil nation with, and they want mediocrity. And the net result is a peasant people that's going to be ruled by tyranny.
Yeah, and what's hilarious too is they totally sweep under the rugs like the verifiably true stories of American greatness, and then they prop up stories about how bad America is, but they exaggerate them, and they're not even like accurate. Like, last year I think Joe Biden gave a speech on the Tulsa Massacre, he called it. If you look at the history behind that, it's nowhere even close to the way he was describing it. In fact, I think it was actually instigated by an armed black mob, and this is the story. Well, they burned down Black Wall Street. It's just another story of how the white man has always kept the black man down. It's just not true. But there's no honest study of history because their narrative has to be that America and white people are the worst, and all these new Americans, these are the really good people, and we have to totally accommodate them because they're frankly ethno-narcissists. They come to this country, but they don't actually abandon their former identity. They still believe that actually Mexico is the greatest country, or actually, No,
but this is documented recently, and of course, please, neither John nor I are saying, I'm an immigrant, okay? Technically, I'm an African American. I've got an African passport and an American passport. So let's just get intellectually honest here. So we're not saying I'm pro-immigration, but
I'm not pro-immigration.
I am pro-immigration, 100%. I'm pro-immigration because we have to be able to bring the best of the best here, but there has to be a process. There has to be a process. We cannot just say no one else can come in, or I wouldn't be here. But it took me 15 years.
Yeah. So
to become a citizen.
If I were king, there would definitely be no deportation of Jaco. That just would not happen. But to that, I would say we're at a point now where virtually all of our population growth, as we've gone over, is because of immigration. And I would have subscribed wholeheartedly to the meritocracy argument maybe 40 years ago. But given the way the trends are going now, I would say, look, he might be the best of the best, but I don't want, my people being replaced in their jobs in their neighborhoods by someone who's maybe smarter than them. I feel like they are Americans and they have an obligation to at least be a little bit worse off at the job. And that's even theoretically speaking. I mean, we are American people. There is no greater resource on the face of the planet than American people. We built the modern world. The Western people built the modern world. You're not going to convince me that like some person from India who maybe has 10 points a higher IQ score should actually be allowed to come here and then through chain migration bring their whole family because he's going to type like 10 more lines of code per hour than this other American guy. I just think that that's not good. I would advocate for an immigration moratorium for at least 10 years. I think we need to close everything completely. We need mass deportations because otherwise you're never going to be able to assimilate all the people who are here, who are advocating against American identity, especially because we have no institutional power. We have no media representation. So if we do manage to capture some form of government power, I think we need to get hard on immigration as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, look, you have to be hard on immigration, but you have to have immigration. And you and I will maybe agree to disagree, but I'll say this. There is no American exceptionalism it's all immigrants. It's all coming in. But here's a system for those who haven't immigrated. It's actually very, very hard. It's very, very easy to fly to Guatemala right now, join a caravan, and walk across the border. Very easy. It's very, very hard, for instance, to get an O1 visa. I've helped over 35 families immigrate, and these are all exceptional people. I'm talking about people who do things that there's no American that does it. They can't be done. Like new fusion technology and energy technology, amazing things. But here's case in point example. Here's a guy named Jaco Booyens. He was on the show. One of the greatest inventors on the planet today. He's a modern day Einstein. This guy developed technologies how to eradicate food deserts. Okay, only one in the world. Won awards around the world. We had to prove. It took us 2 years to prove, but with supporting documentation from scholars around the world, that he was exceptional. For him to get what's called an O1 visa, and then to prove that there was no one in the United States that could compete with him. All right? That's the current system, and Americans don't know this. This is immigration law today, and it was before Trump, before Bush, for crying out loud. Okay? This is the law now. Legal immigration for exceptionalism. I had to get letters from scholars and universities around the world, and then he had to be celebrated in the press. He had to have won awards, right, to show that's our system. But Americans don't know that. That's really hard. That's good though. It should be hard. Even Jacques will tell you today, it was hellaciously difficult, but it's worth it. And now he came in here, and because of what he's done, then now hundreds of people are employed. Americans get jobs. It's cross collaboration on new technologies. Now there's other technologies. But we have a system, John, for that. The system's being circumvented. The system is thrown to the trash. Our founding fathers and those that set up systems like that really thought this through. If you wanted to come here and say you are exceptional, then show that you're exceptional. If you, in my former line of sport, if you can hit a 93% of field goals over 45 yards and you're from Australia, there's 3 guys in the NFL that can do it right now, okay? And there's 30 job openings. So, okay, you are proving you're the best of the best, right? I'm breeding a competitive environment. They're destroying the competitive environment. What I'm saying to you is they're violating our laws. Our laws on the books are tough. Took me 15 years, man. 15 years. You know how easy it is to get on a boat and just walk across?
Yeah.
15 years, $100,000 for me to become a citizen. And a lot of pain. A lot. And something is broken with the system. It needs an overhaul. I agree with you. I don't think a moratorium will ever happen. I don't think we'll see that. But we definitely need to crack down, shut a border down. Not even just halt, shut it down. Get equilibrium back. Restore balance. Let the laws. I was on a radio show yesterday, Alan Nathanson's radio show, and he's like, "Jaco, talking about immigration, asylum." And I said, "You do understand, asylum law says you need to apply for asylum on the other side of the border. Then you need to qualify. And you can't say asylum because of sexual abuse, right? Because that's all over. 1 in 3 women around the world. There needs to be real asylum qualifying measures. No, that's out the window. They're not even touching it. Okay. I want to jump onto something else. You have a particular opinion on this. I know. But let's start fresh. I'm going to say one word.
Okay.
And then just whatever comes to that mind, let it rip. Okay?
I think I know the word. Okay, go ahead.
No, I don't think you do. But maybe you do. If you did think of this, tell me. Just raise your hand. Pornography.
Bad.
Just tell me about it. What's happening in your generation? We have the stats. We've done a whole show on porn. I mean, we've done a deep dive. But your opinion, because you're in touch with guys. You're not married. You're single. Well, I don't know if you're single.
We'll have to discuss that.
This is something you and I have been talking about for a long while.
It's true. It's true.
We got to help you there. I don't know. We'll talk about it. But you're not married.
Correct.
All right. So you're a guy in relationships or not in relationships, but you're single. So you're not responsible directly for a family. What is going on, dude?
Well, I think that this actually touches on what we mentioned earlier with the way that men perceive women as objects. Now, The most compelling or interesting arguments to me against pornography aren't so much the way that maybe it objectifies women. I think that's true, but I like to leave women to make those arguments. It's more interesting to me the way it destroys men.
Yes.
Because typically when young boys are exposed to pornography or they're interested in it, their mothers aren't going to really have an argument, frankly, that goes beyond, well, I don't like it because it's mean to women or it exploits women. And the dads are going to kind of be like, oh, come on, he's a kid, he's curious or whatever, because they're probably watching it too. And so they really underestimate how destructive it is neurologically and biologically to these boys. But I think now we have a very antisocial generation of young men. There are young men who can't even make eye contact when ordering a coffee or something, or with a waiter or something. And I think that their first experience with women now, because of technology and pornography, isn't going to be, behind the bleachers at a football game or at prom or whatever. It's their experience to pornography. The average age is 9 years old or something like that. 8 years old. And that, and even assuming a normal distribution, that means 50% are younger than 8 when they're first exposed to it.
Yes.
And so their entire concept of what a woman is an object.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get to be in high school or whatever, then they want access to that object. And because they're antisocial, maybe they're a little weird and socially awkward, they can't exactly get that access. If you look at the proportion of guys who are having sex actively, young guys, it's tanked in the last 15 years. And a lot of, more trad guys look at that as a victory because they think guys are abstaining. They're not. It's because they just can't get that access. And so when they're trained to only view women as objects to which they want access, and then these women don't give them that access, then there's the resentment. There's this real bitterness and cynicism towards women. And I think that's very unhealthy for men, because what are we doing this for if not women, if not for families? Nothing. I mean, what, cars and boats? No, it's ultimately for families. That's what you're going to be thinking about on your deathbed. You're not going to be thinking about, your objects. You're going to be thinking about your family, memories you had with them, your friends, things like that. So, quite literally what it is, it's a mechanism to hijack your brain's reward circuitry, which is your entire driving force as a man, like your dopamine, your serotonin, things like that. And it literally just depletes it. And it's in total abundance. It's totally free. There's no immediate consequence for it. And so people think this is totally harmless. And of course, they're going to want to pursue it. But you look at the state of men in our country, the two most primal instincts that we have, sex and food, have both been exploited to where now the average American man is this fat, porn-addicted blob, and we're supposed to believe that these men can be trusted with freedom. And we're wondering why the government now has to become so large and so overbearing. It's because this population, quite frankly, can't be trusted with freedom the same way that the class of people at the founding could. And that's what our founders wrote. They said that this Constitution is written for a moral and religious people.
That's right.
It is, quote, wholly inadequate for any other group of people. That's us. We are the wholly inadequate ones.
And that's why we look the way we look. And I say this, I said it at CPAC, and kind of the room was like, dude, what are you talking about? I said, if the founding fathers could speak today, they would be wholly offended, annoyed even. They would say this. If I was a founding father and I look today, I would say this: you fools have not built on what we gave you one bit. You've eroded it. Wouldn't you by now have even furthered it, strengthened it, and built upon it? Isn't that what we do as fathers to my son? My ceiling in my life, and I intend to have a high ceiling, needs to be my son's floor. Mm-hmm. That's generational. That's glory to glory, biblical, in a biblical sense. Oh no, we're not there as a nation. No, we have tanked. I argue we're at Sodom and Gomorrah stage, and if it wasn't for the blood of Christ, this place would have been wiped by fire or something by now.
Yeah. And that's something that I've noticed in the last few years, which at first I was hesitant about because I thought it was wrong. And then I kind of meditated on it, and I was like, actually, this is correct. And hopefully this will be a guiding force for the rest of my life. But I noticed that I was actually judging the fathers of people I went to high school with, who after high school, these kids kind of fell off. They became burnouts. And these are, dads who I'd gone on trips with, who I had been over to their house. They're the nicest guys ever, but they raised weak boys. And I couldn't help but kind of be angry at them for that, because I love their sons. I want them to do well, but I can only do so much as their friend. Their father should have stepped up. And I started to view them as almost like lesser men, which was weird to me at first, because it's like, they're fathers, I'm not. They've been alive longer, they have more experience than me. So I just hope that, if I am in that position, I hope not later on, that my son's friends look at me the same way if I've failed my son like that. But there is, I think, a lot to be said about a man by the way that his kids behave and his family behaves and his wife behaves. You can really tell if the head of the household is doing his job or not.
There's no question. We have a saying, and you'll see when you become a dad one day, you really in a way don't, and this is a dangerous statement, but in a way you don't need to meet the parent. You meet the child and you kind of meet the parent. There is an absolute, we are to lead. There was this I got family. Whew. Dan knows Franco, my cousin in South Africa, he's cut from another cloth. This dude is different. But we did these experiments, right? And saying, and one time we took a kindergarten class, and it had a fence. All the houses in South Africa has electric fencing around it, and it's a dangerous place. And over a weekend, we removed the fence. Okay, so these kids played. Now we tracked them. They climbed on the fence. If they kicked the ball over the fence, there's times kids would climb over the fence, even though it was not legal or allowed. Mm-hmm. They go to retrieve the ball, whatever. They were all over. They covered every square inch. And then over one weekend, we removed the fences. And the Monday they come in and they walk out, and they're not playing on a quarter of the property, right? They're not running into the street. And every single child, over 90% were asked, and they go, it's not safe, right? And it's not just a fence, it is structure.
Yeah.
It's rules and guidelines and structure. And we've bred a young generation, and we've told them, oh, you don't want structure. Oh, no, you want to throw a rock through a window with no consequence. You want to set a city on fire. You want to steal $930. The cops are the bad ones. You should get arrested but not fingerprinted. You shouldn't spend time in jail. And we've removed structure, and now society's going to shrink in.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
And you can even find freedom within structure, which is really like
There's massive freedom. Are you kidding me? Look, John, the Bible says I can't kill somebody, but I can inflict a significant amount of pain.
Does it say that? That was another thing that we were going to have to talk about at some point. I don't
murder.
know.
You shall not murder.
You should not murder, but
yeah. Kill is different.
Anyways,
but you hear what I'm saying though. There's like in football. I always take football because Americans have made football a god, right?
Yeah.
There's no question. Okay, so let's just talk football. And I played pro football. Within the rules of football, you can do damage, man. You can inflict significant pain on another human being. Pressure, intimidation, mind tactics, game talk within the rules. Yes, you can go outside the rules, but within the rules, it is war. You don't have to go outside the lines. You still need structure. Mm-hmm. And there's enough room within the laws of America to be an individual, to be free, to run. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work for the left. It doesn't work for the socialist.
Yeah.
So I look at a young culture that somehow we have to bring men back, fathers back retroactively at times even. Some of these dads need to be counseled and say, now go back to your son that's 25. We got to go restore some things here because things broke. We broke some things in the guys.
Yeah. You're Generation X, right? Are you?
Yeah.
Generation X, I noticed, because they're...
But I'm X from Africa, which is different.
Completely different.
But we're X, yes.
The Generation X in this country, these are the dads who grew up listening to Nirvana and these types of... And they've always had, from my observation, like this very sort of disengaged and cynical attitude towards life. And I see that reflected in their sons, but then channeled through an even more degenerate and depraved culture. And it really is just a sad sight to see. But I've noticed, too, that kids don't go outside anymore. Because they're inside and their parents think that this is okay because, well, at least they're under my roof. I know where they are, but you don't know what they're being exposed to. They're on the internet looking at God knows what. Yeah. And there really does have to be something of an economy. So it really isn't enough. Not to say that we can do anything about this at the individual level. It's just an observation. But for a child to have a good upbringing, there has to be an economy of children who are also outside doing things. I remember when I was biking around,
there must be balance.
I would see, clusters of bikes at different houses, and kids outside doing stuff.
Yeah.
Now I drive around, I don't see anybody outside. And so even if one kid or two kids are outside, it's like there has to be this sort of environment. When you were a kid or when my dad was a kid even, he could bike around because we grew up in the same neighborhood, and there would be kids at, the swim club or the volleyball court, and there was just stuff going on, and that's how you got a baseline understanding of what community is.
Yeah.
But because that hasn't been
and you learn how to handle social pressure and handle yourself and how to negotiate and work with other people. Think of COVID, think of the lockdown, what that did. It's destroyed. But you're right. I was a member of a bicycle gang, not a gang in the sense of doing bad things, but there's 15 of us. I was the youngest. Just keep up or fall behind. And look, in Africa, you play outside. I went to school without shoes on, so we really can't take. My upbringing doesn't gel with America. It's so far out there. I was sharing with the girls in our office yesterday. It's just you can't. There's too much. They even asked my sister yesterday, who flew in from Nashville, "Is this true?" She goes, Yeah, this is true. So I went to school without shoes on, for crying out loud. So let's just separate that for a minute. Boys need to get outside. They need to get dirty. They need to get hurt. They need to bleed, Mom. Your little Ken doll is not going to break, okay? They need to experience life a little bit. And dads don't work on cars anymore. I laid under a car with a flashlight for years of my life where I wasn't even allowed to touch the tools, but when I was a grandfather would smack me on the head. It's just get dirty. Somehow, John, we have to reestablish that. And yes, I see the X generation in this country because I think the baby boomers overcompensate. They worked so hard, they had nothing. They worked their tails off. Then their sons, the X generation, they overcompensated for them. Mm-hmm. All these trust fund babies. You get a lot of these American, and then now there's this disconnect of like, okay, well, what do I do with a boy? Like, when do we do what? It's almost like there needs to be a school to go, by this age, this must have happened.
Yeah.
By this age, this should not have happened yet. You should not talk to Johnny in 5th grade about masturbation.
Yeah.
Right? That can wait. But get Johnny out there to go put a helmet on his head and hit somebody. Get him to go hunt. Get him to be outside and conquer his fear for the dark and for heights. Get him to make eye contact. And how do we talk to a woman? Wash the car. Yeah, dude, this was like a rule. Not even, I'd get our phone would ring, right? And my mom would answer. And our 2 neighbors down, the man would call my mom and go, hey, ask Jaco to come wash my car. This is not even our car. I don't want to. Right? And my mom, a single mom, would say, buckets in the garage. And I would walk over and go wash some other dude's car by hand. Yes, with dish soap, for crying out loud, okay? And then he would complain. And I was 12 that it wasn't washed properly. Praise God for those moments.
Yeah.
That's child labor. No, that's growing up.
The child labor, and this is probably my most libertarian opinion.
Uh-oh. Are you going to go Eric July on me here?
No. But I am completely
You do know the libertarians have great ideas, but they implement nothing.
Yes. I am very pro-child labor. And I would actually argue that it's even conservative because...
Hold on, John. Hold on. You're on my show. We defend children, okay? We can't be... What? You pro-child
I was
labor.
gonna elaborate, but then you...
Okay, elaborate. But I don't want people to see you in the wrong light. But okay, go ahead.
They won't because of the elaboration.
Okay,
you just
do
have
it.
to trust me.
I'll be quiet.
When I was 12 years old, my biggest problem was that I couldn't get a job. I was looking for money, and so I would have to invent these really obscure things. Like I would go to the Salvation Army, and I would buy, golf polos and jeans, and I would try to sell them on eBay, or I would have to mow lawns. I think that the reason that it's illegal for, I'm talking about, kids who are...
Sweatshops.
Yeah.
You're not talking about sweatshops.
I think if you're 12 years old, you should be able to get a job. The reason that you're not allowed to do that, and they'll say it's because, well, that's exploitation, that's picking on kids. I think it's because they want to delay the maturation of children, in particular young men, because that is experience. I wasn't able to get my first job until I was 16, and that built a lot of character. I'm working at Subway. That built character.
It's amazing.
Food service.
And by the way, just to that point, don't lose your train of thought. Not for $25 an hour.
Yeah.
Like exactly. What they want to do now.
Like
I'll go with Chick-fil-A, but I want to work 25. No, you're 16. You got to go make minimum wage.
Yeah.
If I'm a parent today of a 16-year-old, which I'm not, I will ask them to pay my child minimum wage.
Yeah.
That's healthy.
And I think it's also because it would set off too many alarm bells about what they're doing with mass immigration with low-skill workers. Mm-hmm. If all of a sudden, now you've expanded the labor force to 12-year-olds, you would literally have 12-year-olds working alongside these migrants at fast food places, at whatever. But because they're able to kind of maintain, an optimally smaller labor market for those types of low-skill jobs, it's not as obvious the effects of it. Because when I was working at Subway, I was working alongside middle-aged people, older people, and it's like, I was always taught that these are jobs for, pimple-faced high schoolers, but it's like, no, these are jobs that people are trying to make careers out of because our economy is so messed up. And so I'm very pro-child labor, maybe tween labor, young teenage labor, in the sense that it builds character.
But let's define it and separate it from sweatshop
adolescent labor.
Forced labor.
Yeah.
No forced labor.
Yeah.
You're talking about a 12-year-old that talks to mom and dad and go, listen, man, I want to start a business. Mm-hmm. Or I want to go work. Well, right now, in my house, there's a shop. I kid you not. That's selling goods. And it's my 2 daughters. Mm-hmm. Okay? They made me pay $5 for seltzer water 2 days ago. But I bought the dang seltzer water. We'll have that conversation because I paid twice. But it's a real shop. Yeah. It's called Sonic, not Sonic like the But it's a shop. They have it. They've got goods. They're selling. And I go, this is but they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Arwen is dreaming up businesses. So I agree with you here within reason,
Yes.
right? Not forced labor and 12 hours a
not.
day, whatever.
No way.
But the exposure. Think of apprenticeship programs. Think of the ability to social skills and then work ethic.
Yep.
But again, not $25 an hour. Minimum wage. Why? Because you climb through because if you jump, what did Biden say recently? For every college graduate that doesn't earn $125,000, you shouldn't earn $125,000 a year coming out of college.
Yeah.
Okay. I know you want to, but it's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the kid that comes from nowhere that signs a $10 million signing bonus in the NFL and his life falls apart. And people ask, well, why did that happen? Because it's too much too soon.
Mm-hmm.
Like so much today. Sex too much too soon, et cetera, et cetera. So, okay, I'm glad we clarified. We're not getting some sweatshop situation here.
I've read stories about, back in the 19th century, they would send 8 and 9-year-old boys on overnight journeys to go get horses, and they would bring them back.
Yes.
And I think to myself, I don't know if I could even do that now. And then, we're always talking about...
Look at the show Yellowstone.
Yeah, I've never seen that, actually. Is it good? Worth watching?
Well, look, the language, I don't approve of language, but culturally,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really, really well written. Tyler did a great job, but there's a young boy in there, and he becomes a ranch hand.
Mm-hmm.
In society today, cringe to like, oh my goodness, it's child labor, it's whatever.
Yeah.
The kid lives on a ranch. You're gonna go brush the horses, buddy. You're going to scrape the stalls, buddy. That's not child labor. That's building character.
Exactly.
And then if you reward the kid for it, great.
Mm-hmm.
It teaches him capitalism. It teaches him a worker's due his wages, which is biblical, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot to say about this. It's very healthy.
Yeah, I think that's the reason too, because people always like to say on Twitter, like, oh, you need to be getting married young. And I agree with that, but we also have to understand that like the men who were getting married at 18, 100 years ago were mature enough to get married probably by that age.
But they died at 40.
Well, that's also true. But they died beautifully at 40.
Yeah,
but
it was a compressed life. You couldn't wait until you're 30 to get married. You would never reproduce. I mean, their lifespans wasn't there, right?
That's true.
It's context. That's something that's something our country has lost completely. The French are not asking what's a woman.
The French aren't?
No.
Didn't they invent gender theory?
But they're not today asking what is a woman.
Yeah.
Nor the Dutch with prostitutes in the windows. It's only America. What's a woman? It's only us that has a Supreme Court justice that won't define what a woman is, although she is one, okay?
Yeah.
We've lost our minds because we're removing all construct. We're changing language. Before we close, I want to ask you this.
Sure.
It is my opinion, and it's an educated opinion, that you cannot change culture without changing language. It's fundamentally not possible. You must change language to change a culture because language sets barriers. Well, they're changing language left, right, and center, okay? What are some of the language changes that you can recall that is happening at the moment, such as it's not prostitution, it's sex work. It's not pedophilia, it's MAPS, minor attracted person, all that kind of crap.
Yeah.
What are some of the euphemisms or the slang things or language changes in your demographic that's happening at the moment?
The one that's probably the most consequential and also the most irritating to me is the way that they've changed what gender and sex mean. And their argument is like, oh, well, we've always used language to evolve and, change meanings and things like that. And that's true. Words have evolved. Language has evolved. But what they negate is that we still maintained things to describe the concept. So even if we took this word and put it over here, there's still something to describe this concept. So they're changing the language because they're trying to eliminate the concept.
Absolutely.
But they're being very sneaky with it. And, even if you have a real study of language, and, I love my French teacher. He would always explain, where these roots were coming from and things like that. And he would always break down, the word origins and, things like that. If you look at the word gender, that has always meant sex. 1-to-1. And they'll say, well, no, it means something different because John Money. No, it doesn't. If you look at the word gender.
We're not talking about sex, the act.
Yes. Sex meaning gender.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing. Because the word gender, think about gen. Where else do we see that? Generation, genesis, generate. It means to create something. Where do you see that? Dermatology, taxidermy. It means flesh. Gender literally means to create flesh. Your role in that act. It's the same thing as biological sex. It means literally the same thing, but they're saying no because some guy abused 2 young boys in an experiment 60 years ago. Now we know better than that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's destructive, and it's a slippery slope, right? It all comes down to, and this is where I ask the church, and when I say the church, I mean believers in God, in Jesus, whether it's Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostal, doesn't matter. The church, the body. This is where the church, I think, has lost and failed miserably. We have slowly given up territory in culture and in language, right? And well, is it really that bad if we call it sex work? Yes, it's absolutely detrimental. By the way, OSHA requirements couldn't even live on. There would be no more sexual harassment in the workplace if you decriminalize prostitution. But how would you now differentiate? Well, this guy can rape this girl and it's legal, it's a job, but this guy can't grab her backside in the office. But no, people don't think. When you remove these construct things and foundations, society crumbles, falls apart. When you start calling, it's just a minor attracted person. Well, what rights does a minor attracted person have? Well, they can have sex with a kid. Well, can the non-minor attracted person that don't identify have sex with kid? And what happens to the kid? And what will that do to society? No, he's a pedophile.
Yes.
He's a pedophile that should go to jail for 30 years. Why? Because we have to defend the innocence of the kid who can't speak for themselves, who can't vote yet. You can't mess with that stuff, man, because once you do, we're toast.
Exactly. And I think that we do that because we think we're trying to arrive at the truth. But by actually doing that, we're going away from the truth.
Exactly.
I saw a movie recently. It was called Vengeance, and it was a really great movie. But one of the lines in it came from, a stereotypical Texan guy. And I'm going to use this from now on. He said, buddy, I could point to the reasons, but the reasons ain't the point. It's so brilliant because that's the thing. It's like I could, list reasons A through Z as to why you shouldn't have sex with a kid, but that's not the point. We know this is true, and having this conversation is beyond the scope of rational discourse. I'm not willing to walk across a stage with you and shake your hand and read my opening statement as to why we shouldn't be having sex with children. If you have that opinion, you need to be redacted. There is no open conversation.
Exactly.
I'm just not willing to compromise.
There's no conversation. That when people come to me and say, Jaco, how many genders? 2. Conversation's over. Well, let's debate it. There's nothing to debate.
Yep.
There's nothing to talk about. Well, what age should a kid? We have established that. We have statutory rape. We understand. 18 over, 17 under. Done. Conversation's over. Anybody that wants to move that needle has ill intent.
Yes. And because there's no other reason.
There's no other reason.
Why? Because if they were
you want to destroy people.
Exactly.
You want to justify sin. You want to stay in it versus departing from it. You want to morally corrupt our country. We need 7 hours with you. So please, will you come back?
I would love to. I think this was a great conversation.
It was a lot of different topics. We're going to have a hard time picking a subject matter for this. I don't know what let's stick to men, Rebecca, if we can. We're going to go to something about men, American men, and where are we, young men? John, just when you get out there in your amazing car.
Yes, true.
You drive American muscle. And I'm not the guy that's a foreigner that believes in foreign, okay? Mm-hmm. I drive a Ford. I do love American muscle cars. So in Fast and the Furious, I would be leaning towards, the muscle cars than the imports, the souped up Toyotas and whatever. Although that's the number one selling car in South Africa is Toyota.
And they're taking them away. I heard Dodge is discontinuing the Charger, the Challenger. 2023 is the
last year for the Shelby. We need muscle, and they need to be coming from crude oil.
Yes.
Out of the ground.
Yes.
I want to hear it.
Exactly. I don't want to sit in a Tesla and just go, that's fun. I want to feel it. I want to hear it.
Guy, I was in a Tesla the other day, and Elon is a fellow South African, but it's just not the same, guys. There's no adrenaline, dude. I mean, I'm in the Tesla. We go 0 to 60 in ludicrous mode, okay, in some unholy speed, and I could hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
I go, there's no adrenaline there. Yeah, I'm pinned back in my seat, but that's not what it's about.
Exactly.
It's about I want to smell gasoline. I want to smell gasoline. You know what I do every single... Dude, I'm primal. I'm primate A. Do you know what I do? I pour gas every single time I pour gasoline. I'll just take a smell.
Yeah.
Let's go, I'm a man.
Because I put 93.
No, I don't have a problem, okay? And I spilled some gas on my hand and I climbed in the car. Not unintentionally, right? It kind of it dripped, right?
It just happened.
And my daughter's like, Dad, that stinks. And I'm like, do you know this doesn't stink for a boy?
Yeah.
And I said, Torrin, he's 3, does this stink? And he said, no. And I go, it stinks for girls, but for boys, it just wakes something up in us, buddy. No battery can do that for me.
It's true. We have epigenetically evolved. You know, the Dream Cruise up in Woodward in Michigan.
Yeah.
It's all you smell for miles is gasoline, and it smells good.
It
smells American.
It's muscle.
The internal combustion engine.
It's muscle. Look, it made Harley Davidson. That sound. It's got to feel like it comes from the gut, right?
Exactly.
That thing you're driving is mean.
It is.
What is it?
It's I don't know. I don't want to say.
Okay, but look, it's even bright orange. It's mean. That thing's mean.
Yeah, true.
Only problem I have with American muscle cars, they were not made for me. Okay, we're the tallest. I come from the tallest nation on earth.
That's true.
The Dutch. They need to just give us a little room. No, and not the leg room. I think Mustang. Dan and I was in the garage the other day. Dude, it was sweet as a honey, bro. We saw 0001 and 0002. First 2 off the assembly line. 2 brothers own them. Of the 8, what is it, a 6-liter, whatever, Shelby. The Shelby Mustang. The first and second.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, right? But it's something in the bucket of the seat. That's just, I don't know. I just need space.
See, this is what we're talking about with the failure to assimilate. You've got a Dutchman complaining that American muscle
Not a
cars
Dutchman. That's an
don't
insult.
Accommodate him.
Calling me a Dutchman means you don't leave the building. We call 911. I'm an Afrikaans boy. I'm a boer. No, but it's just that I feel like, you know, but I love that muscle. And then I love the new vet.
Yeah.
I drove it recently. I absolutely love what they did. The weight is centered now. It's centered. It used to always, the tail would kick out. That new vet is special. And for the price point, it's something special. It is.
I like those, but they hurt my feelings when they took out the circular brake lights. That was always, I thought.
That's your thing?
Yeah, it was great. I think it was 2013, the first year.
But you don't have circular brake lights on this monster in the driveway.
But it wasn't known for that.
Okay, I get it. Okay, they broke protocol. I get it.
It's true. So
Listen,
you gotta.
I love your car. I haven't been in it yet, but I've heard it, and it sounds amazing. When you fire it up in a parking lot, it's amazing. So no, look, I want boys, and we say boys to be boys, not about sex talk. I want boys to become men, strong men who defend women, who defend freedom, who step into the gap. We didn't even get into this. What's up with this? We just quickly. What's up with this culture men filming injustice? Put your phone away and get in the fight, man. I mean, what in the world? Everybody wants a hit on. No, it's not John. That stuff doesn't fly for me, man. I can't.
I think it's.
I lose instant respect.
Yeah, I think it's the weakness, and I also think it's because the types of people who tend to be the most likely to do that type of violence, we've learned that we just have to put up with it, and we can't do anything because
you smash that dude in the mouth.
And that's the thing, though. We've seen cases where they do that, and then they're prosecuted.
I understand, but it's because. But here's why. It's because it's isolated guys that's doing that.
Yeah.
Okay? This whole nonsense, even when Trump was president, there's one thing I absolutely despise that he said, silent majority. And I go, why in the heck is the majority silent? Because the tail will wag the dog when the majority is silent. If it's individual guys, one-offs. But if all of a sudden the norm becomes you cross, you steal, and I'm in the store, I'm taking you down. If that's the norm and there's 100,000 guys, 200,000 guys doing that, that will become the norm. We've allowed the pansies to become the norm.
Yeah. He stole that from Richard Nixon. So.
Well, Nixon was wrong too. The majority shouldn't.
Nixon.
I get it, but the majority shouldn't be silent. I'm sorry.
It's true.
Not in this case where they come after our children and, well, we'll just, no. Line in the sand. Let's go. Those are fighting words, man. We can't. We've got to defend this nation. You're doing a great job as a young guy. Thank you. Let's talk about the dating stuff a little off.
Yeah, off camera. We'll go for a ride in the car.
Yeah, a burger.
Sure. We'll go to In-N-Out, and
no, we'll go to Kincaid's.
Well, here's my plan at In-N-Out.
Nice,
I was going to go up to get you some ketchup or something, and my hand, because you make some little quip, and I would look back to insult you back, and then my hand would reach to the ketchup at the same time a young ladies would, and they would touch, and we would have like this very cliche, like, oh, I'm sorry, and then we would exchange contact information, and then 2 to 3 years from now, you would give a toast at my wedding where you would recall this conversation and the story immediately following. You're shaking your head. They're not trusting them. They have no faith in me.
Do I need to say any more about where we are?
What's the problem with that? What do you want me to go on Tinder? You want me to set up a Tinder profile?
No, I don't want you to go on Tinder. I was talking about you and me need to go have a real, like a 2-pound burger and talk through. And you want to take me as a ride along on a what?
To In-N-Out. You get a 4x4. That's a big burger. Get it animal style. I mean,
yeah, but you want me to go witness you do a pickup line?
No. It was not a pickup line. I'm not going to cold approach some girl and be like,
but
hey.
You wanted to touch her hand?
No. I don't want to.
I'll come to your wedding, but let me organically
It was
witness
fate.
this.
It was fate. I reach for the ketchup and she does at the same time. It's fate. It's not like a setup. You misunderstand.
You heard it here first. It was not going to be a setup. Fate was going to happen at In-N-Out. Now watch. We probably will go to In-N-Out, and he probably will meet a girl. Because God says, as a man thinks, so is he.
It's true.
So I got to ponder that one. We'll get in your muscle car and go to In-N-Out. God bless you, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Talk to you guys next time.